The institutional tsunami, how documented market dynamics could propel XRP into four-digit territory. Here's what everyone's missing about XRP's current market structure and why the data suggests we're witnessing the setup for one of the most explosive wealth creation opportunities in crypto history. What I'm about to reveal will fundamentally change how you understand institutional money flows and their impact on digital asset valuations. We're not talking theory here. We're examining documented market behavior, verified institutional strategies, and mathematical frameworks that demonstrate how XRP's unique market dynamics create unprecedented leverage opportunities. The numbers I'm about to share come directly from institutional research, verified trading data, and corporate filings that most retail investors never see. By the time we're done, you'll understand exactly why sophisticated money is positioning aggressively in XRP and why the next 18 months could determine generational wealth outcomes. The market cap multiplier that rewrites everything. Let me start with the most important concept you need to understand. XRP exhibits documented market cap multiplier effects that range from 212x to an astounding 1250x on verified capital inflows. Here's the concrete data that changes everything. In March 2025, $80 million in net inflows generated a $17 billion market cap increase, representing a documented 212x multiplier. But that was just the beginning. In July 2025, $61 million of buying pressure on Upbit increased XRP's market cap by $16.6 billion, a 272x multiplier effect. The most dramatic example occurred when just $16 million in net inflows over a 6-hour period triggered a $20 billion market cap expansion, yielding that incredible 1250x multiplier. Think about the implications. A recent analysis by Phil Kwok using the XRP Market Cap Multiplier tool demonstrates that with XRP trading at $2.97 and a circulating supply of 59.3 billion tokens, a $10 million buy order could increase the market cap by $1.78 billion, resulting in a 178x multiplier. Scale that to institutional levels, and a $150 million order projects an 803x multiplier, potentially pushing XRP to $5 and establishing new all-time highs. These multiplier effects exist because of XRP's unique liquidity profile. While 59.3 billion XRP tokens circulate freely, institutional research shows that the top 1% of addresses control 71% of the supply. When large capital flows enter this constrained liquidity environment, each dollar of buying pressure gets amplified across the entire token supply, creating the documented multiplier effects we're observing. JP Morgan's $8 billion projection meets documented market dynamics. Now let's apply institution-grade analysis to the most significant catalyst on the horizon: XRP ETF approvals and the projected capital inflows. JP Morgan analysts project that XRP ETFs could attract between $3 and $8 billion in first-year inflows following the successful template established by Bitcoin and Ethereum spot products. Here's where the mathematics become absolutely compelling. Bitcoin ETFs accumulated approximately $108 billion in assets, representing roughly 6% of Bitcoin's market capitalization. Ethereum ETFs achieved $12 billion, equating to about 3% market cap penetration. If XRP achieves similar institutional adoption rates against its current $194 billion market cap, we're looking at potential inflows ranging from $5.8 billion to $11.6 billion. But here's the critical insight most analysts miss. Applying the documented 1250x multiplier to these institutional inflow projections yields theoretical price targets that sound impossible but are grounded in observable market behavior. A conservative $3 billion ETF inflow, multiplied by the 1250x effect, would theoretically push XRP's market cap to $3.77 trillion, translating to approximately $540 per token. An optimistic $8 billion inflow scenario under the same multiplier dynamics would result in a $10 trillion market cap equating to roughly $1,437 per XRP. Stephen McClurg, CEO of Canary Capital, has made even more aggressive projections, predicting $5 billion in XRP ETF inflows within the first month alone, a tenfold acceleration compared to earlier estimates. Using documented multiplier effects, this single month of institutional adoption could theoretically generate over $6 trillion in market cap impact. Vivo Power's strategic arbitrage validates institutional thesis. While retail investors debate price targets, sophisticated institutional players are executing strategies that validate the bullish thesis through concrete capital deployment. Vivo Power International's announcement of a $100 million acquisition of privately held Ripple shares represents one of the most sophisticated institutional arbitrage strategies we've documented in the digital asset space. The numbers reveal unprecedented institutional opportunity. Vivo Power's equity purchase grants exposure to approximately 211 million XRP tokens at an implied cost of $0.47 per token, an 86% discount to market prices. This arbitrage exists because Vivo Power is purchasing Ripple equity at a $19 billion private valuation, while Ripple's 41 billion XRP holdings are valued at approximately $135 billion at market prices. Vivo Power's stock responded dramatically to this announcement, surging 52.3% to $5.94 following the news, with after-hours trading adding another 16% gain. Over the past 6 months, Vivo Power's shares have gained an astounding 552%, demonstrating how equity markets are pricing in the strategic value of XRP exposure. This creates a fascinating dynamic. While Vivo Power secures XRP exposure at $0.47 per token through equity participation, retail investors must purchase at market prices exceeding $3.20. This 85% plus arbitrage opportunity exists solely because of the structural differences between private equity valuations and token market dynamics, an opportunity unavailable to ordinary market participants. The transaction structure involves BitGo for institutional-grade custody and Nasdaq Private Market for share transfers, with quarterly independent audits ensuring transparency. Vivo Power becomes the first publicly listed U.S. company offering shareholders dual exposure to both Ripple equity and XRP tokens within a regulated corporate structure.
South Korea's market dominance signals global institutional trends. XRP's performance in South Korea provides concrete validation of institutional adoption trends that are likely to replicate globally. The data reveals market dynamics that most Western analysts completely overlook, yet represent some of the most compelling evidence of XRP's institutional traction. The South Korean numbers are staggering. XRP consistently accounts for 16.04% of daily trading volume on Upbit, South Korea's largest exchange, translating to approximately $558 million out of $3.52 billion in total daily activity. This performance dramatically outpaces Bitcoin at 7.68% and Ethereum at just 2.31% of total volume. South Korea contributes approximately 22.4% of global XRP trading volume, making it the second largest fiat currency market for XRP globally, trailing only Tether at 34.96% of total volume. In recent periods, XRP trading volume across South Korean exchanges has approached $1 billion daily, with Upbit alone processing $716.79 million compared to Bitcoin's $403 million. The institutional infrastructure development provides the foundation for this dominance. BDACS, a regulated cryptocurrency custodian, launched institutional custody support for XRP in August 2025, following a strategic agreement with Ripple in February. This integration with major Korean exchanges, including Upbit, Coin1, and Korbit, enables institutions to hold and transact XRP under full regulatory compliance with Financial Services Commission guidelines. The regulatory environment creates sustainable advantage. South Korea's FSC has established clear digital asset guidelines, implemented comprehensive licensing requirements, and created blockchain-friendly economic zones that reduce regulatory uncertainty. This contrasts sharply with jurisdictions still navigating regulatory ambiguity, giving South Korean institutions first-mover advantages in XRP adoption. Institutional asset allocation creates massive capital deployment potential. To understand the scale of potential institutional inflows, we need to examine the asset pools that sophisticated allocators are beginning to deploy into digital assets. The research reveals institutional asset concentrations that dwarf current crypto market capitalizations. The numbers are almost incomprehensible. Insurance companies control $37.7 trillion in assets under management. Pension funds manage $58.5 trillion, with recent regulatory changes allowing 401k and IRA investments in cryptocurrency for the first time. Hedge funds oversee $5.22 trillion, while brokerage firms control $40.1 trillion in client assets. Sovereign wealth funds manage $11.5 trillion, and family offices control approximately $6 trillion. Aggregating these institutional asset pools yields approximately $254 trillion in investable capital. Even modest allocation percentages create extraordinary deployment scenarios. A conservative 5% institutional allocation would direct $12.7 trillion toward digital assets. A more aggressive 10% allocation, which Tom Lee now recommends for younger investors, would deploy $25.4 trillion into crypto markets. Current crypto market capitalization stands at approximately $4.29 trillion. Institutional inflows of even $10 to $15 trillion would represent a 3 to 5x expansion of the entire digital asset market. If XRP maintains its current 4.7% market share, proportional growth alone would drive significant price appreciation. However, XRP's regulatory clarity, institutional partnerships, and payment utility position it to capture disproportionate institutional flows. EY's 2025 Institutional Digital Assets Survey reveals that 59% of respondents plan to allocate over 5% of assets under management to cryptocurrencies. U.S. respondents and hedge funds indicate even higher allocation percentages, suggesting accelerating institutional adoption beyond conservative baseline projections. Technical infrastructure and regulatory clarity drive adoption acceleration. XRP's technological advantages create sustainable competitive moats that institutional users increasingly recognize and value. The XRP ledger processes transactions in 3 to 5 seconds with fees typically under $0.0002, enabling throughput exceeding 1,500 transactions per second. Energy consumption remains under 0.0001% of Bitcoin's requirements, making XRP tens of thousands of times more efficient, while maintaining superior security through consensus validation. The regulatory landscape has transformed dramatically. The August 7, 2025 settlement between Ripple and the SEC formally ended the 4-year litigation, with both parties dismissing their appeals and Ripple paying the agreed $125 million penalty. This resolution preserved the crucial July 2023 ruling that XRP is not a security when sold on public exchanges, while clarifying that institutional sales constitute securities offerings requiring proper registration. The settlement immediately triggered institutional confidence. Daily trading volumes increased 208% to $12.4 billion following the announcement. Galaxy Digital disclosed the $34 million XRP holding in Q2 2025, while firms like Quantum Biopharma and Hyperscale Data added XRP to corporate treasuries. Market prediction mechanisms validate approval probability. Polymarket assigns 87% probability to XRP ETF approval by Q4 2025, with Bloomberg ETF analysts Eric Balchanis and James Seyfarth updating approval chances to 95%. Multiple asset managers including Bitwise, Grayscale, Canary Capital, and 21 Shares have filed preliminary applications.
And you guys, I have a special trick for you, which nobody seems to be using, and I cannot wrap my head around why. Because if you sign up through my link down in the description onto the BTCC exchange, you get a 10% deposit bonus. And now stay with me here. Now, here comes the important part. If you have any trading capital on any other exchange and you move it to your newly created BTCC account, you get on top of your capital you moved another 10% extra trading capital. As an example, if you move or deposit 10K to your account, you get 1K for free. And here is why this is possible. BTCC makes money on trading fees. The more capital you have, the more you trade. The more you trade, the more they earn. So they are literally investing in your trading activity by giving you extra capital up front. And unlike other platforms where bonuses are in the 1 to 3% range, BTCC's bonus is a full 10%. I'm not kidding. I really don't understand why nobody is doing this. To me, it really seems like people sometimes are too lazy or just don't like free money. I kindly ask you to pause this video and take your time to make an account. You can thank me later in the description of this video.
Beyond speculative dynamics, XRP's utility in institutional payments infrastructure continues expanding, creating fundamental demand that supports valuation independent of trading momentum. Ripple's on-demand liquidity service now covers 80% of global trade corridors, with over 20 banks using ODL in production environments across Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. The operational impact is measurable. ODL reduces remittance costs by 0.3% and pre-funding requirements by 65% compared to traditional correspondent banking. Cross-border payment settlement times drop from 1 to 3 days to under 30 seconds, while eliminating the need for Nostra account pre-funding that ties up billions in idle capital. RippleNet partnerships encompass over 300 licensed financial institutions across 45 countries, with nearly 40% employing XRP for liquidity sourcing. Major banking relationships include Santander, SBI Holdings, and QNB, which report 40 to 60% reductions in capital costs compared to legacy settlement systems. The XRP ledger processed 2.14 million daily transactions in Q1 2025, with over 75% settling in under 5 seconds. Daily transaction volumes now average 2 million, with the ledger's full history surpassing 10 terabytes and growing by 6.2 gigabytes monthly. XRPL development activity has accelerated significantly, with over 750,000 new accounts created in the past 12 months, and trusted validator count reaching 154 globally. The Hooks Amendment introduces conditional smart contract logic, while the EVM sidechain enables Ethereum-compatible development, expanding XRP's programmable finance capabilities. The mathematical framework for institutional price discovery. When we synthesize the documented multiplier effects with projected institutional inflows and XRP's unique supply dynamics, the mathematical framework suggests price discovery mechanisms that operate far outside traditional asset valuation models. Consider the conservative institutional scenario. If XRP ETFs attract $5 billion in first-year inflows, Steve McClurg's projection for month 1 alone, and we apply a moderate 200x multiplier, well below the documented 1250x maximum, the theoretical market cap impact would be $1 trillion. With current circulating supply of approximately 59.3 billion tokens, this translates to roughly $17 per token from ETF inflows alone. Scale to the full institutional thesis. Tom Lee projects 10 to 20% cryptocurrency allocations becoming standard for institutional portfolios. Applied to $249 trillion in institutional assets, even 10% allocation would deploy $24.9 trillion into digital assets over the coming decade. If XRP captures just 5% of these flows, $1.25 trillion, the multiplier effects become extraordinary. Using conservative 100x multipliers, $1.25 trillion in institutional inflows could theoretically generate $125 trillion in market cap impact. Even accounting for supply expansion and multiplier compression as liquidity deepens, the mathematics suggest price levels that most analysts consider impossible, but that emerge directly from documented market behavior and verified institutional capital pools. The timing dynamics are critical. These extreme multiplier effects exist precisely because institutional adoption remains in early stages. As deeper liquidity pools develop and market participation broadens, multipliers will normalize toward traditional 10 to 25x ratios. However, first movers who position during the current multiplier environment capture the maximum leverage from institutional adoption. Strategic positioning for generational wealth creation. The convergence of documented multiplier effects, massive institutional asset pools, regulatory clarity, expanding utility, and favorable supply dynamics creates what institutional analysis suggests may be a once-in-a-generation wealth creation opportunity. The risk-reward mathematics are compelling. Current XRP prices around $3.20 reflect pre-institutional adoption levels. Documented multiplier effects suggest that even modest institutional inflows could drive price appreciation of 5 to 10x. Full institutional adoption scenarios, supported by ETF approval and regulatory certainty, point toward price targets that sound impossible but that emerge from verified market dynamics and verified institutional capital pools. Vivo Power's 86% arbitrage through equity participation demonstrates how sophisticated money is positioning for these outcomes. The company's 552% stock appreciation following its XRP strategy announcement shows how equity markets are pricing institutional XRP exposure. The institutional infrastructure is rapidly maturing. BDACS custody integration, rail acquisition, hidden road prime brokerage, and expanding ODL corridors create institutional-grade rails for large-scale adoption. As these systems achieve full operational capacity, the infrastructure bottlenecks that currently constrain institutional participation will disappear. We're witnessing the early stages of what could be the largest transfer of institutional capital into digital assets in financial history. XRP's unique position, regulatory clarity, proven utility, institutional partnerships, and documented multiplier effects positions it at the center of this transformation. The mathematics don't lie. The institutional strategies validate the thesis, and the infrastructure is rapidly developing to support outcomes that seemed impossible just months ago. For those who understand these dynamics and position accordingly, the next 18 months could determine generational wealth outcomes. The question isn't whether institutional money will flow into XRP. It's whether you'll be positioned to benefit when it does. The documented evidence suggests that opportunity won't last forever, but for those who act on institutional-grade analysis rather than speculation, the potential rewards could be extraordinary. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the institutional dynamics reshaping XRP markets. The data speaks for itself. The strategies are validated by concrete capital deployment, and the infrastructure is rapidly maturing to support outcomes that seemed impossible just months ago. If this analysis opened your eyes to opportunities you hadn't considered, make sure to engage with this content and stay tuned for more institutional-grade research. In markets exhibiting 1250x multipliers, positioning matters more than timing, and the positioning window may be narrowing faster than most people realize.